Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello. So, hi. We are here, by which I mean me and Ryan Praught, here, my guest. And we're here to talk about that win by the Montreal Canadiens, by your Montreal Canadiens. It was a 3-2 win versus the Philadelphia Flyers. I will personally count it as a 3-1 win. I will be saying
As you
that
should, as you should.
as I will. And man, what a game. This is the kind of game where it's like really just this team is always in it, right? Like that's always we'll talk a little bit about it. Nick Suzuki doing Nick Suzuki things. Lane Hutson doing Lane Hutson things. Uh First line I thought was dominant. I haven't looked at the numbers yet. I'll do that in a bit because I like giving a live reaction because usually my instincts are completely wrong. So I feel like a team like this, numbers aren't always, I'm not anti-stats, but I feel like context is everything. Anyways, so I am here. I'm Kay. If you don't know me, I'm seeing a lot of very active chat. Thank you everybody for stopping by. Really appreciate it. We are finally here. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties that led to me being a little late. Regular chat people will know listen, I'll blame this on myself. Ryan was here on time. So speaking of, here's Ryan, my lovely guest. Would you like to tell everybody about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, lifelong Habs fan. I've written about the Habs in the past. I've kind of taken a little hiatus, but I'm happy to be on the show, talk about the Habs, talk about important win, exciting times for the team and for the franchise. And I know we're all having fun. I've been following along and just trying to soak it all in. This has been a very fun time for us. It's been a hard few years, so to get to this point has been worth the wait, but exciting nonetheless.
Yeah, I feel like everybody says that this is one of the more fun times that we'll have in the rebuild, and I'm gonna appreciate it while we're here. Two big points. As you know, everybody knows, or if those who aren't scoreboard watching as quick as closely as I am, who aren't watching the standings as closely as I am, we are still in the wild card 2 spot. And we have a 4-point lead on the Rangers. I believe we have a 4-point lead on the Rangers with 1 game in hand. Um, and today's game was big. It was 2 points. The Rangers kind of shot the bed a little bit earlier today. Um, and it was really important to take advantage of that. Uh, you know, the Blue Jackets also lost today versus the Leafs. And for first time in a long time, I will say thank you very much, Leafs. I don't like saying that, but hey, here we are. Uh,
Well, they owed us though, because we beat the Panthers twice in a row, so they needed to repay the favor.
exactly. Let's just say, we're even. I'll just stick with that, um
Yeah.
to any of my lovely Leafs friends watching, I'll say that. um this was, the kind of win that the Habs, well, first of all, let me just say congratulations to Josh Anderson, who I think is probably right now a new father or about to be. He was out for family reasons, and he had mentioned, and if you stalk people on social media, by which I mean I follow I don't, I don't know if she's unlocked, so I don't think I follow her, but whatever. I've seen like I follow a bunch of the different like Habs like wives and girlfriends like Caitlin is constantly very active, so I've seen reposts about baby showers and et cetera, et cetera. So I know his wife is pregnant. Uh, She's not anymore, I'm assuming. Either way, congratulations. I can't wait to see dad power Josh Anderson after the Josh
Well,
Anderson we've been seeing.
if
Yeah,
it's anything like Brendan Gallagher down dad power, it's needed.
it's so good. It's so good to see. I listen. I told Ryan coming into this that I like to go in with the vaguest of plans, not Vegas, the most vague plans, and then go from there. But I guess just I was supposed to start with talking about Nick Suzuki, which I always love talking about Nick Suzuki, and I'm sure I will talk about Nick Suzuki. But I mean, while we're on the topic, like not today's game, but overall, Josh Anderson this season, right? Like we've been longtime mutuals on Twitter. So I think we've both seen each other as frustrated with Josh Anderson era. Um, but he's been great, eh? Like, what have you been? How have you felt about this new Josh Anderson?
Well, it's funny that whole line, right? Like Gallagher, Dvorak, and Anderson have all kind of been like people that we've been frustrated with at times because they're paid a lot of money and they haven't necessarily lived up to that billing. But Anderson, Gallagher, and Dvorak have all really stepped their game up when the Habs have needed it, and I think that that's a very welcomed feeling,
Hmm.
especially for Anderson and Gallagher, knowing that they're still under contract moving
Yeah,
forward. It's nice to know that they're playing close. I don't know if they're quite worth the money they're making still, but they're definitely playing at a very high level when they need it, and it also helps that the top line is probably underpaid at this point, so you
yeah,
kind of evens itself out a little bit. Yeah,
yeah.
Anderson, he's sort of playing more like that power horse that everybody kinda called him, and it's so needed, like,
Yeah.
this is not a one-line team this year, this is a group of guys that have come together. You can put Jake Evans in that group as well. I mean, a lot of guys have stepped their games up when the Habs have needed it, and Anderson is no exception to that, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that kind of the point that you made about the contracts, I think these contracts are a lot easier to bear now as fans, knowing that the cap is going up and that,
Mhm, for sure.
frankly, these are maybe close to value if we were to sign guys doing something like this. This summer, for example, I feel like when everything's said and done, I am never going to say that was a good contract by Marc Bergevin. Those contracts were good contracts by Marc Bergevin. But right now, with the cap being what it is, I think that this is pretty, appropriate for the guys we're getting. And like you said, it helps that the first line is being paid like what will be the like second liners in this new cap era, as Arpin Basu always says, which is, I think it's a lot easier to swallow when the big picture itself just makes a lot more sense, right?
For sure, 100%. Yeah, I think, like you talk about Nick Suzuki, he's a point per game player, and he's not paid like a point per game player. He's paid probably more like a 60-point player, and so it makes it a lot easier to swallow in. And quite frankly, there's quite a few contracts on the Canadians that are looking really good, and you can only hope they keep looking good. Caden Gooley's contract is another one that I think is going to age really well.
Hmm.
Caulfield, maybe Slavkovsky down the road. I'm hoping, to take another step as well.
Hmm.
And it's been exciting to watch just sort of everybody kind of grow. I mean, that's kind of the idea behind a rebuild, right? Is it's not just about team success, but it's fun to watch the individual players get better, and it's also
Hmm.
nice to see resurgence from players that we thought maybe were on the decline in their career, like Anderson and Gallagher, and I'll throw Dvorak in there as well.
Hmm. Hmm. I think Dvorak has maybe quietly been inconsistent, but I would say maybe a little bit more positive than we're used to this season.
For sure.
But I think now he's like having the more like visible positive things, if that makes sense. Like before, I think he was creating a little bit and like doing responsible things, but he wasn't scoring, so it was less noticeable by fans. He was stuck at, I believe, 99 goals for like forever. And then he
Yeah.
eventually scored, and it was like the dam broke, right? Um, so that was it's been nice to see. Um, but we're talking first line. Holy hell, Nick Suzuki. I'm just going to say it, guys. I feel like anybody at this point who is denying Nick Suzuki as a 1C, people can argue elite, high end, whatever. Like I believe he's high end, but whatever. That can be an argument. But arguing if he's a 1C at this point, personally, I think anybody who's arguing that is arguing for the sake of arguing or arguing because they know it'll get Habs fans worked up. Um, I don't think anybody with a working knowledge of hockey can genuinely deny that he's a 1C. How are you feeling about Nick Suzuki right now, Ryan?
I mean, it's funny. I've been a Habs fan for almost 25 years now, and in my entire lifetime, there's been 1 point per game player on the Canadiens, and that was Alex Kovalev back in 2008. Until today, Nick Suzuki's got 83 points this year. He's officially a point per game player. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Canadiens had the longest drought in the NHL of going without a point per game player. That is now over, thankfully. We can finally put that to bed. Next up is the 40 goal scorer. Uh,
Mhm.
looking like it's probably not going to happen this year, but I'm hoping very soon that's coming off the board as well.
Mhm.
And I mean, what more can you say about, like, you talk about a 1C? How many 1Cs in the league are playing in every situation? How many are out there killing penalties, scoring insurance markers shorthanded, out there with the 2-goal lead protecting it, playing in all
Mhm.
situations, and then, also relying on them to lead the offense. I mean, of course,
Mhm.
he's not the only one center in the league to do that, but
Mhm.
there's not a lot. Like, I don't think you're seeing Connor McDavid on the penalty kill or Crosby on the penalty kill.
Yeah,
There's
to be
something to
honest,
be said about that.
exactly. I think it's the so my joke was always like I'd post a picture of um some very tired looking creature. So a really tired like looking cat, a really like really like messed up looking like animal and being like, oh, that's that's Nick Suzuki right now because he played like so many minutes. The meme that's like, please choose a different. I'm not your strongest soldier. Pick. So it was always like Nick Suzuki's always out there. Nick Suzuki's on ice, likely place for him to be. All these things that are, this year with the emergence of our penalty killers, which really good penalty kill even before the shorthanded goal, I think today. Um, with that, I think it's allowed Nick Suzuki to play less penalty kill and, keep his numbers down, time on ice a little bit lower. But he's clearly still capable, as we saw today with that shorthanded goal. To which I would say, man, make a save, but also what like poise by Nick Suzuki, right? Like he stumbled over himself and still managed to like outplay a flyer. It's just really cool to see this guy who is just so calm and collected. I think like that's something everybody says about him, and I think it's so true. And I think you really, I don't know, I feel very lucky to have this man as my captain. Like that's all I can say. I'm just so happy.
Well, we were talking before we got on about, is clutch a thing? Is he a clutch player? And I mean, I think he's proven that. I mean, the Canadians need someone to step up since the Four Nations break. I think only Robert Thomas has more points in the NHL
Mhm.
than him. Um, and he's done this throughout his career. He even did it in junior. Like when he was in Guelph, they were down 3-0 in a series against the London Knights, and he led them back to win that series. And then they won the OHL championship. He showed that
Mhm.
again in the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. Like when the moment gets bigger, he rises to the occasion. And we've
Mhm.
seen throughout a long time the pressure that playing in a market like Montreal can bring, the
Mhm.
pressure that being the captain of the Montreal Canadiens can bring, and he had that kind of thrusted upon him pretty early in his career, and he has just answered the bell. He gets better
Mhm.
every single year. There's something to be said about, like, the kind of player he is, and who's to say he's done growing as a player too. Like, the exciting part is you got more talent coming to help him out, maybe help him get more points and stuff, but he's also just seems to be coming into his own more and more and more. And
Mhm.
he's still young enough that he can get that next level potentially. And I mean, it's a joy to get to watch him play 82 games a year because the other thing is he does not miss a game at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially with like this team, availability really is an asset. Um, for me, it's just, with regards to that kind of clutch thing, It's just really a matter of how do you define clutch? You know, like now I'm talking like philosophy, where I'm like, what is clutch? And to me, like it's just it's a very logical thing of being able to perform under pressure. And to me, that's a personality. That's a ability to handle pressure. That's not taking a puck over glass penalty when you're in the playoffs and your team gets reverse swept and you're, no crowd even to really be dogging at you. So can you imagine if the Bell Center was full and like absolutely giving it to you? So sorry to Mitch Marner catching strays, but there is there's a dog in him, right? Like there's a certain like I'll just do it. And I think there's nothing that quite proves it like the way that the Four Nation stretch has gone, especially because we heard that he was challenged by his general manager to be like, you don't want guys leaving, you want to keep Jake Evans, prove it. Like, show me, make it worth my time. And again, it's just so cool to have a guy who's just able to step up to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially too, you talk about post Four Nations. I'm sure he wanted to be at the Four Nations. He
Yes.
probably felt a little snubbed, and I mean, this is in many ways an audition for the Olympics next year. And
Hmm.
each passing game, it's getting harder and harder to deny that he's going to be on that team at some point, which would be pretty cool as well. I mean, you don't really see offensive players for the Canadians getting national attention, getting to play for the national teams and stuff. I mean, Pacioretty did for the States, but he was like a fourth liner.
Hmm.
It's harder to make Team Canada than it is any other team. To be
Yes.
on that team, even as a fourth liner, would be a tremendous accomplishment. And I mean, he's living up to the billing of what he needs to be as the center and the number one center and the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. And then keep in mind, he's doing all of this without a two center, right? Like Kirby Dach
Yes.
isn't even here. So
Yeah.
more responsibility is thrown on his shoulders, and he's stepping up to the plate in a big
Hmm.
way. Uh, as are a lot of other guys, to be fair. I mean, Brendan Gallagher is gone through a lot just the last couple weeks, and
Hmm.
he's playing the best hockey he's played in a while. It's been a ton of fun to watch all these players come together, and Nick
Hmm.
Suzuki is no doubt leading the charge, as
Yeah.
is Lane Hutson, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely want to talk a little bit about him because why not? Um, because why, like, what else would we do? But first, kind of before we do, I would like to welcome everybody. I'm seeing some new people in the chat, and I'm also seeing our lovely regulars. So thank you so much for joining us. For those who first time joining us, we are Game Over, or I am Game Over Montreal. Today, Ryan is Game Over Montreal as well. And we are a network that does post game shows for every single Canadian market. Um, and we're here after every game. Uh, and I am here a lot. You guys will see me a lot. I'm not always I'm not always alone, so I do have a guest today, Ryan. You get to see somebody else's face, but sometimes it's just me. And it gets silly. I'm sure it'll get silly later too. Honestly, I'm not it was such a fun game that it feels like a waste of silliness to not be silly. It's a very technical term of that. But kind of before we move on to the next portion of our show, which I think we'd like to talk about Lane Hutson, because of course we would. I am going to hand you guys over to Andrew, who is going to tell you a little bit about one of our lovely sponsors, Inchoo Bijoux.
We are so excited to tell you about our new partner here at Game Over Montreal, a delightfully witchy goth and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver to gold pieces to glamorous bespoke. Inchoo Bijoux is more than just a company. They've built a community through advocacy and a welcoming attitude that has made them an institution here in Montreal. Located in the historic Chateau Saint Ambroise, Inchoo Bijoux also runs seasonal themed markets called Maleficarum Market, or Marché Maleficarum en français, where artisans from all over get together and showcase and sell their wares. Drop by 4000 Rue Saint Ambroise, Suite 278, and say hi to Astrid and the Wicked team. Or head to inchoobijoux.com and enhance your style. The next Maleficarum market will be on the weekend of February 8th and 9th. We'll see you there. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out.
Hi, Andrew, from a few weeks ago. Let me just make sure I am unmuted. I am unmuted, and Ryan is also unmuted, which is good because it is Lane Hutson time. But first, I see Trizak in the chat saying, "Okay, I missed the game. Can you please recap it in a haiku?" No, I can't do that because you know I crumble under pressure. I am not Nick Suzuki. I will. It's not gonna go well. Interpretive dance. You know what? I'm not at my best right now. I'm not warmed up. You know, guys, I would do a great interpretive dance if I could be, if I was warmed up. You know, like I could do that. I could definitely do that. But I'm not going to right now. Out of mercy. It is not fraud watch. Come on. Come on. Um but speaking of not frauds, how about Lane Hutson? Am I right?
That's a great segue. Yeah. I mean, what more can you say? I mean, we haven't seen a player win a major award for the Canadiens since Carey Price did when he won all the awards. It felt like it
He
feels
hogged
like
all of
it's a
them.
pretty
He
yeah
took all of them and was
yeah
like, "No more." So
no more yeah. It feels like we can say that that's going to end again as well because it's hard to envision anybody beating Lane Hutzer for the Calder. I mean, he's just incredible. Speaking of Suzuki, it's a joy to watch Lane Hutson play as well. I mean, and he plays a ton. Doesn't actually play on the penalty kill, so it's really impressive that he still plays. Feels like 30 minutes a night, and he
Mhm.
practices every day. Doesn't miss a practice. Like I don't know how he has the energy to do it, but he's a difference maker every game. I think he was one of their best players again tonight. Obviously, he scored one of the best goals we've seen of the year from a Canadian, maybe by
Wow, that
anybody.
goal. Oh my God.
It's, I mean, all night they couldn't solve Ayerson. It felt like it was going to take a perfect shot to beat him, and Gallagher and Hudson both delivered on that front. I mean, you couldn't pick the puck up and put it in the net with your hand any better than Hudson did on that goal. It was a thing of beauty. I jumped out of my chair when I saw it. It was special, and I mean, I you're running out of words to say when you
Yeah.
talk about him because saying, "Oh, he was amazing," just doesn't feel like it does justice. I mean,
Yeah.
he's fun to watch, and I cannot believe that they got him 62nd overall. I cannot believe 32 teams because the Canadians passed on him 3 times too before they finally took him. I can't believe that we got him at that spot. Like that's just
Mhm.
that's what you dream of. You don't expect it, and here we are.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, what a gem. Him and his combine bone doctor notes. We got him. I was actually listening to a interview with or I was watching an interview with Kent Hughes. And it was one with Frank Saravalli. And Frank Saravalli asked about Lane Hutson and asking, why he thought that they were able to get him so late. And essentially, Kent was like his size. And then in the answer, like that's a whole separate thing. But like in the answer, something that he revealed was he's watched a lot of Leighton Hudson because his son played very like in the COVID years, those like age groups. I believe he was like 1 year ahead of Lane Hudson, but in obviously if you're involved in that kind of area, you're gonna know Lane Hudson, but also, during COVID times, it was the age groups were a little bit more mixed. So Kent Hughes was watching him for a long time. And he talked a little bit about how they discussed as scouts that they thought that he'd be there a little later. So it was a bit of a gamble that they took, not in drafting Lane Hutson, but the gamble itself was putting it off that long. And did it pay off? I love Slav. I love Slav so much. And I do think that like he will ultimately turn out to be a very unique, I hate to echo it, but a unicorn of a player. I do think I have full faith in him. Um, but I think right now, uh, best player out of the draft? Question mark? That draft? Would you
It's
say so?
it's it's close. I was looking at the other day of like points by players from that draft, and Hudson is already third.
Mhm.
Slavkovsky's of course first, but he's also played the most games. For a defenseman to be third on that list already, ahead of Shane Wright, ahead of the two other defensemen that were taken in the top 5 of that draft, like he's a special player, and I don't think the draft. It's too early to say like, oh, he's clearly the best player. There's a
So
lot of
far.
runway left,
So far.
but so far, it's hard to argue. It's really hard to argue because, as far as I know, nobody else from that draft has won a Calder for whatever respective year they've played in. It helps that he's probably has a couple more years. Like Celebrini is doing great this year as an 18-year-old, so that deserves credit in his own right. But
Mhm.
Hudson's going to win the Calder because he is the best defenseman from the draft. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's fair to say probably the best player from that draft right now. I think if you did a redraft, there wouldn't you could count on one hand how many players would go before him if there's a single one.
Mhm, mhm. I would agree with that. I think you know what? Let's talk specifically Calder. I'm glad you brought it up because, um, personally, and I know I'm so biased, but don't think there's I think that he's pretty far ahead by a good amount. I think definitely from Celebrini. Think his biggest competition right now is Dustin Wolf, and Dustin Wolf is fading a little bit. Um, and I think when you have a guy setting records the way Lane Hutson is, um, it's hard to, deny that. I'm seeing who was it in the chat? I saw Hockey Dad 27 say, "What a game by the boys, Lane for Calder," and I I think every single game we come out of that saying that. Honestly, even losing efforts, I've seen them and go, man, Hudson did his best, right? Like he did his best. He came out of last game, I believe, with it was a win, but he didn't have any points. Um, who cares? Still did Lane Hudson things, you know?
Yeah.
I just think that like it's so sick to see. But for the sake of argument, I'm playing the devil's advocate. Um, I hate that, but playing devil's advocate. Um, what are your kind of what are your thoughts about Celebrini doing it without help, compared to Lane Hudson doing it on a, let's be honest, better team?
Well, I think, and you could throw Wolf in there too. I think there was sort of an argument for every single one, depending on how you wanted to look at it. Like Celebrini's got less help, and he's 18
Mhm,
years old, so it's realistically fair to say it's a little harder for him to do some of the things that maybe Lane Hudson is doing, just because of what the situation he's walking into is.
mhm.
I mean, we're seeing with Connor Bedard in year 2 that he's struggling just because the Blackhawks have kind of refused to surround him with anybody who could, like, he's playing with nobodies essentially, or
Yeah.
other rookies. It's a
Mhm,
lot to ask of any player, let alone an 18 or 19-year-old.
mhm.
So I think there's something to be said there. And then for Wolf, I mean, as a goalie, you only have so much impact on the game, and yet the Flames were 32nd in scoring, and they were in a playoff spot at one
Ask
point. The
Carey
Blues
Price,
have
man. Like
exactly.
yeah.
The Blues have rendered that obsolete at this point because they're never going to lose again. But at one
Mhm,
point, the argument was sort of the same of like his impact is massive. He only can impact the game in one way, and that's keeping the puck out of his net. And somehow he's doing that to the tune of almost getting the Flames to the playoffs. I think truthfully, they were like neck and neck, and then the last couple weeks, it's just been the Lane Hudson show. He's just sort of taken off, and I
Mhm.
mean, we're seeing national media members sort of say, "All right, the race is over. Like
Mhm.
it's done. It's Hudson's award to lose." And I mean, it's like it's got to be frustrating if you're uh, a Sharks fan or a Flames fan or even a Flyers fan, because truthfully, Mitchkov could have an argument too. Any other year, they might win, but we're seeing a historic year from Lane Hudson. Anytime you're in the conversation with Nicholas Lidstrom, it's kind of hard to deny your brilliance. It's kind of hard to deny you're not the best at your category, whatever that may
Mhm.
be. I mean, but I mean, truthfully, like if I was a Sharks fan, I would have a hard time stomaching seeing the great season that Celebrini has had.
Yeah.
The consolation is, okay, he's gonna be good for a long time. He'll have his chance at a different award.
Mhm.
But, I think the debate is over, but I do think for a long time the debate existed.
Mhm. I would agree with that because, okay, I don't wanna sound like I'm, wearing a tinfoil hat or whatever, but I would say at the start of the year, I wasn't seeing a lot of promotion of Lane Hutson, from the NHL. I saw a lot of Celebrini, and it makes sense because I think the NHL is doing so bad in so many ways, but one of the good things they're doing is I think they're trying very hard to expand markets. We're seeing them do a lot of work there. So I can see why they'd be promoting a, California team. We're seeing success from Florida teams, so it makes sense, right? They're trying to push that. Um, and I think that I think Celebrini was just doing great stuff. To be fair to him, he was also doing stuff worth pushing. He was doing highlight reel stuff. Um, but I feel like they weren't promoting Lane Hutson in the same way. Just from an um, national perspective, continental perspective. That always throws me off because I'm like, it's not national, it's North American. But anyways, you know what I mean. From a
Yeah.
league-wide perspective, I don't think they were doing a lot. Now, I guess you could argue that the Habs weren't doing a lot, but were the Sharks? Like, it's not like that's not an argument. I'm arguing with a guy who hasn't argued with me yet, but I'm making the argument. Um, Chris says, I think the season started with people assuming Celebrini would get it, and Lane Hudson had to force them to pay attention. And I think it's a good mix of the Habs doing what they have been doing, um, and that plus Lane Hudson just being like, I'm great. I'm really, really good, and you're gonna see it. Um, so I think that changed things a little bit because I do think that maybe people are starting to see a little bit that the Lane Hudson is bad defensively was very exaggerated. Maybe with more of his stuff kind of being pushed, people are able to see that a little bit more. Although Sharks fans and Flyers fans and Flames fans will show that one Kraken overtime clip where he got walked and that was also there was a face off, there was et cetera, et cetera. There were things that happening there, whatever. Um, but I think that ultimately that was a big long ramble, but I'm there's something so cool about having between Caulfield, who, small boy, um, uh, Nick Suzuki being constantly underestimated, and Lane Hudson being like, I'm gonna force you to pay attention. I think I know a lot of fans or a lot of fans who, you know, are in my corner of the internet anyways, maybe not the mainstream fan, kind of hate the term culture, and hate that kind of, but it's a, it's a culture thing. I think this, I don't know how else to say it. It just feels like this is just a group of guys who feed off of each other and very much feed off being underdogs. Apparently, they refuse to win when they are actually in a wild card spot up until very recently. They just every time they slipped out, they'd start winning again. It's good to see that they're winning now. Um, but that's it's a separate question, I guess. Kind of related, kind of separate. But what are your feelings on that kind of concept of it's an overarching question. How do you feel about this concept of building a winning culture?
Well, it's hard to say for sure because like there's a lot of variables. I mean, you look at the Buffalo Sabres and you think like, well, they definitely don't have a winning culture. Um, I don't know like what goes into it because I mean, you look at the Canadians too. I don't other than David Savard, I don't think there's a guy on that roster that's won a Stanley Cup and has been a part of a ton of winning in their career per
Alex
se.
Newhook?
But they've
I think we forget about him all the
that's true.
time,
You're
but
right. Yes,
Alex Newhook
you're right. You're right.
did
I,
constantly spend a lot of time around Nathan McKinnon, which
that's true. You're right. I did forget about I did forget about New Hook. But it's not a lot of guys,
No,
and they
no,
didn't
it's
add
not.
anybody like that at the trade deadline either. But they do seem to have like a buy-in that I think is lending itself to winning. I mean, today they didn't play very well to start the game. It took sort of some guys starting to get the energy going. It took a big penalty kill. It took the heart and soul of the organization in Brendan Gallagher to get him on the board to like then they just took off. Like
Mhm,
I think there's truth in the idea of not necessarily so much of like a winning culture, but like a competitive culture, a culture of guys who come in and just get to work and don't make excuses for themselves or because I mean that's the Canadians game is they're fast and they work hard when as much as it felt like they didn't play well, the Flyers only had like 12 shots midway through the
mhm,
game. The expectation of the Canadians though and why we were kind of disappointed was because they've played such a way that we expect them to beat the Flyers, and we know they can beat the Flyers, and we can they can outskate them and they can outwork them. And when they started to do that, look what happened. They won the game.
mhm.
That's kind of where they need to figure out how to do it for 60 minutes because it's been quite a few games where they've slowly started.
Yeah.
But when they do, they're tough to beat. Like they beat Florida, they can compete with Colorado. They can beat Dallas and Vegas on the road. Like they are building a culture of buy-in and guys,
Mhm,
you know, coming in and doing what they need to do. I think there's something to be said about the manner in which they the professionalism they bring to what is
mhm,
their job.
mhm.
They don't take days off for the most part.
No, no.
They might take a period off, but they don't take days. Every game, they're in it till the end. So I think there is something to be said about it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think a big part of it is Marty, I think, is someone that we really he has his Martyisms, we're building a house, but are we building a home? All those things of that very clearly just works. This is a group of guys who it's just so obvious that they love each other. It's the power of friendship. They play for one another. Something Marty's always said is, "I don't go into the dressing period during intermissions." So as we know, they tend to not always play the entire game. So it's a lot of self-regulation too, um, which for a young team, it's impressive. It's really impressive. What's the kind of the saying? It's like, you don't praise a bird for flying or whatever, something like that. And it's just, but it is. This is a very young bird flying a little earlier than we thought it would. Like it's something to be said about this team just there's one idea of a team and you're supposed to be a team. You're supposed to play for your guys. You're supposed to like your family, your boys are your family. And then there's proving it. There's making the sacrifices. A guy like uh Jo- Jake Anderson. No, we're doing Jake Armia is also not what I'm looking for. Jake Evans taking his contract with a let's be honest, he could have gotten so much more money on the free market, on the open market, sorry, the free market too, I guess, but the open market, and he just chose not to. He chose to stay because he liked the culture, he liked the group, he liked what he was, you know, what they were building here. So there's a sacrifice. I don't want to know what Josh Anderson is dealing with right now, frankly. Uh, it's, I asked, I wonder what his injury is, and somebody replied to me, upper, lower, left, right. Like, it's everywhere. It's gotta be everywhere. I think something that somebody in the chat, MFM, points out is Nick and Cole went to the Stanley Cup Finals super earlier in their career. They know what it takes to get there. Chris added Jake Evans too. Nick added Josh Anderson, a little bit later in his career. We have Galley, obviously, who's been there for what feels like centuries. Which also shout out to the coward Mark Scheifele for for putting Jake Evans out, and I'm glad he was able to come back. Um, Bernardo, I said, "What's wrong with Josh Anderson?" Bernardo says, "It's called having a baby, and it's perfectly normal and beautiful." You know what? Why the hell not? Sure.
But that's a good point too. If they were without Josh Anderson tonight, and Oliver Kapanen stepped up, and I thought he played
Man, what
pretty
a
pretty good.
mhm.
Stepped right in, did his job. Like, it's sort of a next man up attitude. They've lost Kirby Doc, they lost Caden Gooley for a while, but they've found a way to where somehow here we are on April 5th talking about the playoffs being a very strong possibility. I think they're up to like 72% chance now, to the point where we can almost kind of say that if they don't make the playoffs, it's almost a bit of a disappointment, even though
Mhm.
our expectations at the beginning of the season was not really
It's
to
theirs
be in
to
this
lose.
situation. Now they've played themselves into a situation where they have to end on a disappointment to not make it.
Mhm.
The expectations have risen a little bit, but they've that's because they've played themselves into that situation. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a worthwhile experience for the fans, but the players too. I mean, this is competitive hockey. You got to learn to play in these situations by playing in them.
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to lose, sometimes you win, but to be in these situations is important. It adds to the culture. They know what they need to do,
Mhm.
and I mean, we're seeing them. Like, if they could play the way they do in the third period every game,
Mhm.
I don't know who can beat them. The
Yeah.
problem is getting there is a challenge.
Yeah, you're gonna run out of gas at some point. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm seeing some conversation in the chat about somebody brought up Anderson and Yoel Armia who can't shoot. You brought up Kapanen. So you know what? Let's talk a little bit about lineup and lineup decisions, I guess. Um, I think it's gonna get a little bit negative when we get to the defense, but that's a later problem. But first, before we get into that, I would like to send you over to Andrew, King of the North. I'm sure we'll be happy to comment. And we will be right back.
Looking to make awesome memories with your friends? Take some promotional pictures or videos for your business? Check out Saint Motel in Montreal's Sud-West borough. It's an amazing selfie studio located in Montreal's historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, right next to Inchoo Bijoux. It boasts 12 plus unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories with. Hop into their iconic heart-shaped ball pit or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Le Saint Motel can also come to you with mobile decor setups available to rent for events, including setup and takedown, or you can head to lesaintmotel.com right now for more details, or to check out their amazing decors that are always being updated. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out.
Okay, we're back. You know what? We started talking about a little bit. I was digging into the numbers, by which I mean I went onto Natural Stat Trick and just clicked a few buttons. Me digging into the numbers like a detective, which means reading. Um, and something I saw was that Michael Pizzetta had the best Corsi 4 percentage today. His line was the best Corsi line, the Kapanen Pizzetta Armia line. And as we all know, the time on ice kind of affects that and everything like that. So it's not really, it's more of a bit than anything. But we were talking, and we talked a little bit about off mic, which I did unmute. We ended up talking a little bit about Michael Pizzetta and how we thought he looked good, which, you know what? Let's start by talking about the big shiny new toy, Kapanen. I thought he had some really good shifts. What did you see out of him today?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an advantage to be able to take a guy out of Sweden who just finished playing playoff hockey and throw him into meaningful games here.
Mhm,
And then he also got a bit of a breather, so he's not, necessarily exhausted, but he's sort of in that mode already. You're not dropping him out nowhere.
mhm,
It's more impressive almost for Pizzetta, who's barely played this season, to jump in and play. I thought he played okay today. I didn't think he was amazing, but I thought he had the energy they needed. And I thought Kapanen, it was interesting to see he was on the power play. He
mhm,
got opportunities there. I don't know if he was like amazing per se, but I noticed him out there, which is something. And I thought he played pretty good. And I'm excited to kind of see him play a little more because, I mean, he played in the beginning of the season, but he didn't necessarily shine there, but he did have a
mhm,
great preseason.
mhm,
I thought he played a pretty solid game tonight, and, for missing Anderson, I thought he stepped in and played fairly well considering the circumstances, and it's his first NHL game in a long time, and the NHL is a different beast than the SHL, even if it is the playoffs over there, and I thought he didn't look out of place, which I think is the most important thing. I thought he looked solid. I thought he had a couple scoring chances.
mhm.
Um, I mean, what did you think? I thought he played pretty well, all
Um,
things considered.
I agree. I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about my thoughts, but first, let me just tell you, Bernardo gives us the good news. Habs officially eliminate the Bruins and the Flyers, so, uh, hell yeah. Man, the Bruins, eh? Oh, well, that's a different conversation, but hell yeah.
Soaking it
Uh
all in, soaking it all in.
I'm enjoying it, I'm not gonna lie. In the Flyers, who Nick Suzuki, for some reason, it's just, like, hates. He seems to get at his pettiest, at his most, like, angry playing the Flyers, which, like, fine. The petting, the Flyers goalie, patting his head, Flyers goalie whose name I will not say because screw that guy. He doing that and, like, it pissed everybody off, and it was one of the first times that Nick Suzuki, like, it's one of the only times that I'd say, "Oh, he's got pest like he can be a pest if he wants to." He can be a little shit when he wants to. So that's really cool. I'm sure Nick Suzuki's really thrilled about that. Um, but kind of shifting the focus back to Kapanen, so he was pretty clearly outplayed by Emil Heineman when they were trying to make that decision between the two players. And I think Emil Heineman, although he has been struggling a little bit more in the last little while, ever since he came back from being hit by a car,
Yeah,
um,
getting hit by a car will do that to you,
will
I
do that.
think.
Hilarious bit how I believe that now the Cole Caulfield once referred to him in emojis at his story as 51 car emoji, which is really funny. But it's kind of just even with that, I still think he's solidified his place in the lineup. I don't think that there was I think that that's a very safe, good player, and it makes sense that I think it says a lot that Marty put him on the second line. When he felt like the fourth line wasn't working, he broke it up, but he elevated Miguel Heineman, which is really cool. Um, but anyways, going back to Kapanen, so many sidetracks. Going back to Kapanen, I thought he had a really good game too. Um, you know, something that happened to both Joshua Waugh and Owen Beck was their first few games weren't very noticeable. They were, I wouldn't say actively bad, but not contributing very much. Maybe like, and I'm talking about the first time I believe Owen Beck was called up twice. Whichever one of them was called up twice. His first kind of stint of it wasn't as good. Anyways, my point being, I think this is where you see a guy who is more ready. I think this is kind of like you said, the advantage of coming out of the playoffs in the SHL. Um, and kind of, let's I'm gonna say that I'm really glad that that was kind of the unspoken agreement between the two parties, Montreal Canadiens and Kapanen and his camp, of being like, if you're not gonna keep him in the NHL, we'll send him back home, rather than putting him in the AHL, which I think is a way, way fair. Like, I think that was the right move ultimately because uh, we're seeing him come back, and it looks like he's not overwhelmed. Like you said, there were some really good moments where he seemed dangerous. The chemistry, I think, between him and, um, dare I say, Michael Pezzetta is, there were a few moments, Yoel Armia, even with the one arm, which, oh man, I feel bad for the guy. He's clearly struggling through something. Um, this is a this is a good look, I think. This is, for a first game, I think he impressed. I think, um, Marty has all the reason in the world to keep playing him, and I think that's what you really want out of a guy playing his first game in the NHL, or first game in a while, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it also helps too, like, when Caden Gooley went out, they really kind of needed him back almost immediately. Like, I gotta think he's probably not 100%, but it's just a matter of these games are important, and he wants to play in them, and he's good enough to play, so he's playing. Obviously, with Anderson, he's obviously injured, and now he's also a father, so
2
it kind of feels
conditions,
like
2 equally difficult conditions.
yeah. So I mean, it almost is nice. Okay, we could give Anderson a break. We don't necessarily need to pull him back immediately. Obviously, I think he'll be back soon enough to probably to
Mhm,
take Pizzetta out more so than Kapanen. But it's nice to have that luxury of okay, we can put this guy in and he plays pretty well, and we don't have to rush someone back from injury or paternity or whatever it is. And um, it's a nice luxury to have. It's truthfully one that they didn't really have all season. Um, so it's like they've had to call up Waugh, they've had to call up Beck, and I don't know if either of them have flashed enough to show that they're
mhm,
capable of playing at that level yet,
mhm.
especially in these kind of competitive games. It's only one game, so it's too small of a sample
Yeah,
size to say for sure, but he's earned another one, I think.
mhm,
I hope that he definitely is good to go tomorrow because they're right
mhm.
back at it. So
I think that's, like, all you can ask, frankly, out of the position that he's in, is make it a harder decision for your coach. So I believe I saw from, I can't remember who, I'm so sorry, but somebody, one of the reporters, probably was Arben Basu because it's always him, but I saw someone saying that apparently Josh Anderson isn't going to travel with the team. So I'd assume that that's like, that would make me think that Kapanen is playing again tomorrow. Um, a bit of a sidetrack, but man, it says to me, it's a sign. I don't want to overreact, but I think it says something that um, Marty is deciding to keep Yoel Armia with one hand, one working hand, um, and Rookie Kapanen and Michael Pezzetta, who he clearly doesn't trust, or didn't trust. Maybe he's trusting him a little bit, or I don't know. Over Joshua Waugh. Uh, that's you know, I don't know. I'm putting you on the spot, but like, what's your when I bring that up? What's your kind of reaction to that?
well, the Canadians game is almost speed. They're at their best when they're in on the forecheck. They're playing hard. They're playing fast. And unfortunately for Waugh, that's not really one of his strengths. He's not the fastest skater in the world. He doesn't. So like one of the challenges I think he's had is sort of keeping up with the game at that level. He's had moments where he's looked good, but he's also had moments where he's not at the playing at the speed that the rest of the line he's on is playing kind of thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's part of the reasoning. It's also worth mentioning that Laval is playing important games themselves, so they probably would very much appreciate to have them playing 20 minutes a night down in Laval than 7 in Montreal,
Mhm,
especially when they have other guys they could rely on with
mhm,
Kapanen coming back.
mhm,
So, I mean, it's hard to say. I still want to see Wah eventually get a shot, a real shot. He's not a fourth line type of player anyways. He's more of a skilled guy. He's best with the
Mhm,
puck on his stick, and he showed flashes of that last year.
mhm.
So ideally, you might get to see another chance with him, but who knows? I mean, Canadiens are also entering in the off season where they might want to make a swing, and they've got all the prospects in the world. Who knows if
That's
he'll
so
be
many.
involved in that? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
That'll be interesting to keep an eye on for sure.
definitely. Um, you know what? We'll dig a little bit more into, I guess, uh, we'll talk a little bit more about that because I see some kind of pairings and lines. Again, we were supposed to talk about that before, but we'll get into that a little bit more. But first, I do want to tell everybody a little bit about Game Over. Wait, first, before I get into that, Ryan, I've seen Claire ask a few times, so I'm gonna ask lovely Claire, who we love, asks, "Are you from Montreal?"
No, I'm from the Toronto area, like just outside of Toronto, about an hour outside of Toronto.
Me too. We've got two Toronto kids here telling in love with the Habs, which man, I'd rather have this than whatever the Leafs fans are going through on a regular basis. Even with Austin Matthews on their team, which a star would be great,
Yeah,
but hey, ours is coming.
yeah.
Uh, so I'm just gonna, before we kind of move on to that, I want to tell everybody, or kind of pitch that, are you looking for ways to help an upstart media company employing over 30 young journalists and analysts across Canada? We are all Canadian. Support Canadian businesses, networks, etc. If you have a few spare bucks kicking around, we'd love if you could head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/the Game Over Network. There you'll find multiple different tiers featuring different rewards and goodies for helping us grow. There's extra access, exclusive looks behind the scenes, Discord benefits. We have a very active Discord server, merch discounts, opportunities to give us feedback, and join us for special live shows. Um, I think, and don't hold me to this, but I think we might be doing a watch along for Ovi's next game. Ovi's game, the Caps. It might as well be Ovi's game. Um, so if you're not able to spare a few dollars, we do also have a free tier available so you don't miss out. And there's other ways that you can help us. So if you would like to do that, make sure to click like and subscribe on YouTube. Rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app because we do also do a audio only version of this. And share our work on social media of your choice. We're active on Instagram, we're active on Twitter, we're active on Twitter/X, we're active on Blue Sky. I also believe we're active on TikTok. So if you go to our website, you can check out everything. We have all of our links. And yeah, head over to the patreon.com/the Game Over Network for more information about that. Um, so just kind of, I guess, going back to the oh, excuse me, sorry. Kind of, we're touching on individual players. I think we're just yapping today, you and I, which, hey, why not? Love to yap. Something that I brought up Alex Newhook before because I've been an Alex Newhook defender. Um, I have ardently defended him. I think he's starting to find his groove. Like he's really found his groove now. Um, like you said, the Habs at their best are speedy, and man, if there's one thing about that guy, that boy's fast. That boy's fast. It's really impressive to see Heineman also, as Chris says, keeping up with him is also really impressive of him, which is funny because Laine, Heineman, and Newhook is a very funny combination, and it works. Honestly, to me, it works.
Yeah, I think I saw somebody, they said that New Hook is like the new Lekanen, of where it's like he's doing the right things to get the quality scoring chances, but they're not necessarily going in
hmm
the rate that he probably deserves, and you obviously you'd like to see. But I mean, he makes things happen with his legs a lot. He is a great skater, definitely the best skater on the Canadians. You can feel like he can do something with the puck on his stick on a rush,
hmm
and ideally maybe we'll start to see it at some point the way Lekanen ultimately did, of where the puck's gonna start going in, and they're gonna get some more goals out of it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, when he gets the puck on his stick with a head of steam, he makes things happen. I mean, he got them started against Colorado a couple weeks ago, doing exactly that, where he
Mm,
broke through the middle with speed and it led to a goal. And he's a fun player to watch. He stepped up. Like they don't have Doc, they need a two center, and he's playing pretty good in that role. I
mhm,
mean, it's not the best two center in the world by any stretch, but for what they've needed to have a chance to make the playoffs, he's done more than enough, I think.
mhm, mhm. I think so too. Like I watched him on the Abs a lot. And I think it was always that finishing touch that fans were, you know, really searching for from him, which I think we're still searching for from him. They're just if there's one thing that the Avs players can do, it is skate. Most players who can't skate on that team won't make it. So it makes sense to me that getting a player from that team, he can skate. Um, Bernardo says him being able to enter the zone on the power play every single time is really funny. It is really funny considering what we watch happen on Power Play 1 very often, which Nick Suzuki will, like, enter the zone and then nothing will happen. Like, I feel like Alex Newhook enters the zone and then something happens. Like, he'll try to make something happen at least very often, and it's getting better, but very often for a long time, we would see Nick Suzuki get into the zone, and then it was like, a dog caught its own tail, and it was like, now what? Now what?
Yeah. I mean, it's still far it's still the power play is still a work in progress in many ways. In fact, I think they've almost become too one-dimensional with the line A shot being the big thing. And I mean, he was taking
I get the
shots from
temptation. I get the temptation, but
I mean, when you could shoot the puck the way he can, but I think he took one from the hash marks on the boards, like literally against the boards today. I think he took a slapper from there. Which I mean, if you're confident in your shot, I get it, but it was kind of like, man, they need to figure something else out because I think he had to take it from there because that's how much they were checking him on the penalty kill because they
yeah.
all know it's coming.
Mhm. There
But
was one
I
time where the
mean, it's
Flyers left
true.
him, like, fully open, though, that I was like, "What are you guys doing here?" Not
Yeah,
playing good
yeah.
hockey. So
I mean, it was a very sloppy game tonight in many ways. I mean, I think the Canadians had I think it was 15 giveaways in the first period. Like this was
whatever
not
it
a
wasn't
master class
pretty.
on how to play, not a
No.
master class on how to play hockey tonight from either team really.
Mhm,
Um, but then the third period, flips switched and the game changed and the Canadians took over.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, to the point, Newhook is pretty good at the getting in the zone, which I think someone said in the chat, "Do it Devo style, start them on the power play so they get in the zone and then come off the ice."
Which is
It's
actually a
there's
really good idea.
they need to try something
Yeah,
'cause,
yeah.
Hudson's pretty good at it, but he doesn't always bring the puck up the ice because 'cause they'd love to do the drop pass, which still surprised hasn't killed them as often as it probably should.
See, it's just I can't drop you said the drop pass, my blood started. Ugh. Um, See, with the power play too, maybe I'm stupid, and that could be fully it. But I just think that there's, like, a lot more you could do with 2 obviously, Liney's the bigger shooting threat, like, he is clearly one of, best goal scorers. Um, but you do have a very good shooting threat in Cole Caulfield. I feel like, when Laine obviously, the power play has gotten a lot better this year, and I don't think there's a coincidence that now we have Patrick Laine on the team. Let's be completely honest. Um, but Cole was doing a lot of that work before. Again, stupid, but why don't they simply try to see that Line A is the decoy and use Cole? Like, I don't know. Like, is that something to do with, like, the
Well,
handedness? Like, what's happening there?
I think it's partially the handedness. I think, like, when you have 2 shooters on the power play, the ideal scenario in Tampa was doing this for years, where they'd have Kucherov on one side and Stamkos on the other. I think the handedness hurts, but I also think that, to your point, I think you're right. Like, they have to get a little bit more creative in finding ways to get a shooter like Caulfield opportunities, or really anybody else for that matter. Especially because if you get in the playoffs, you're only going to get so many power play opportunities. You really want to make the ones you do have count,
Mhm.
because special teams are going to be huge.
Mhm.
The penalty kill is clicking at a rate right now that's great, but
Mhm.
the power play's got to figure it out. It doesn't feel like it's clicking the way you want it to. Um, and I think to your point, getting Caulfield more looks would be advantageous, obviously, because Line could shoot the puck, but they're very very keen on getting him the puck, and teams are very aware of it, and
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
they're blocking it. It's similar to when they had Weber and Subban, of where it's like they just sort of fell into the trap of that was our one thing, and if we can't get it to work, we're not going to score.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm really liking having Slav right next to the net. Like I feel like um he's accepting that like I remember a story that Arpan Basu said from the way I talk about him on this podcast, you think I know him personally. No, I just really enjoy his work. But one of the things that Arpan Basu kind of said on a Basu Godin notebook um was, once he like talked to Slav and like Slav was just kind of really insistent that I'm not just a big guy. I have hands, like being very insistent about that. This was last season. Um, and I think like it's finally maybe gotten through to Slav that like, yes, we're nobody's saying that you aren't like you don't have the hands. Nobody's saying that. But you are a big boy and like you do have to use that you it's okay that you don't want that reduced, like you don't want that to become your entire identity. That's fine, but that doesn't mean like this is the NHL. You have to take advantage of every little advantage you have, and one big advantage is that you're big. So it's just really nice to see Slav kind of just mucking it up. Like he's in there. He's starting to pest, eh? Like he is not stepping back. He's giving it to guys.
Yeah, I think if they can get into the playoffs, it'll be fun to watch him sort of work, because I think like the biggest key is puck battles and keeping plays alive, and he's very good at that. And when the game gets even tighter, like that's going to become more important, especially when Suzuki and Caulfield, as talented as they are, they're not very big. They're not necessarily
Yeah.
be the ones that win the puck battles, and they're going to get hit a little bit more, and so it's going to be important that the big guy plays like a big guy and is mucking stuff up. And I think to your point, he's doing it, but he can do it even more, I think.
Hmm.
And then he does have the hands. He almost set up Suzuki with a great goal today. Um, I mean, Philly's goalie was their best player today in many ways,
Until he wasn't.
unfortunately, until he
He
wasn't.
wasn't. Yeah,
But um, classic Habs making a backup goalie
genuinely.
with
Yeah.
not great numbers look great.
I
It's
just
the way
tweeted
it
out like a
goes.
screenshot of his like stats, like, no, like, guys, what are we doing here? Because they weren't shooting, like it was insane. Um, but like if for something Nick points out is now that he knows he can play like Brady Kachuk and be successful, that he's trying to it. Um, so I think that's another part is I think him seeing like more success, which I know everybody's like, oh, last season. And I personally also expected him to like build some momentum from last season. I wasn't expecting it to take this long, but hey, he's young. Uh, Everybody always says bigger players always take a lot of time, a lot more time, which like fair enough. I think when you're and this is not to say that Slav doesn't have good hockey IQ, but when your brain isn't like your biggest kind of what you're known for, it can take a little bit of time to adjust. And I think that like somebody I watched a lot of Mikko Rantanen on the Avs, Judas now, but Mikko Rantanen on the Avs, and there was a long time where he like was like a baby deer, where like he's a big boy and he did not know how he didn't his limbs were too much for his own body, right? And I think like sometimes we see a little bit of that in Slav. I think we see a little bit of like the pressure of the new contract. It's a bunch of different factors that I think, but it's really encouraging to see him come back to this. And I think he's doing like he's growing on that. I think we'll always, not always, for now, with him being as young as he is, I believe he just turned 21. Um, I think we forget that sometimes because he was brought into the NHL very early, which again, that's a debate we can have anytime. But listen, I'm getting very sidetracked. But we're talking a little bit of power play. Let's just take a second to really bitch about what happened in the last minute or two of the game. I Masterclass. Masterclass in NHL reffing. Perfect. Amazing. We're all in playoff form. Truly, we are ready to go. We're doing so good. We're missing calls. We are getting yelled at. Nick Suzuki's getting heated. Why not? Why not? Right? Like, we obviously care about safety a lot. So therefore, we're not going to punish like a hit from behind or a trip. I don't even know what that player did to goalie, but whatever it was not legal. That was the first call that they missed. Then the second, like, really, just how, like, one moment that was like, how are you not, like, that should be as automatic as the puck over glass penalty of a guy, like, straight up slashing a stick out of Jake Evans' hand, which, by the way, would have, like, that's how he would have defended that goal that went in the second, the fraud goal. Not real, not real. It was a 3-1 win. I will stick by that. I am so sorry to Monty for his numbers because that is not real. That is so fake. I will let you talk about this, but Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least the positive is it's a bit of a lesson learned for the Canadians of not to expect calls to come in the playoffs because that's playoff refereeing to a T of,
Mm,
oh, I don't want to interfere with the game, so I'm going to interfere with the game by not doing anything.
mhm.
I'm not going to screw over one team by calling a penalty. So I'm going to screw over the other by not calling the penalty. I mean,
Man.
the rules seem to change from one game to the next, right? Like you can set a pick until you can't set a pick. You
Mhm.
can trip a guy, but only if you're on the power play. You're allowed to do whatever the hell you want when you're already shorthanded, basically. Or you're down 3-1 and need a goal. Well, what's one goal, right? It's
Have a
not a big
pity
deal.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I might as well throw the puck in the net myself. Like it could be worse. You could be the Avalanche after the goal where the referee dove in front of the puck.
I
Sorry to bring
believe
that
that
up.
was 2 games in a row and at least 3 goals, in those games that had been affected by the referee. Everybody was furious. It's not like, as Chris points out, Jake Evans was too good on the penalty kill today. They had to nerf him. They had to find they had to find a way to
Well,
hurt him there.
that's the worst part is the penalty kill, I think, outchanced the Flyers in terms of like, obviously, they had the goal from Suzuki, but the first penalty kill, the 4-minute power play, I think
Man,
they
that
also
really
had more
started them off,
opportunities.
eh? I think that really set him
Yeah,
right.
it did. I think you're right. So it sucks that they also scored on the power play because they got away with a lot where it's like, you already have a 6-on-4, and now you get to take away one of our sticks. Like, come on. Like, it's frustrating. Thankfully, it didn't end up mattering.
Mhm.
Because they came close, like, they got the puck in the zone and they set up, went down 3-2. I mean, it
Mhm.
did potentially have stakes, so
Those
thankfully,
refs
it
would be
didn't end up
leaving from the
mattering.
back door if that was the case. If that they would be leaving surrounded by bodyguards. I swear to God, like it would have been
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, it was rough. It wasn't quite Chris Lee in the playoffs a few years ago bad, but
Uh,
it was pretty bad.
yeah, it was like I'm shuddering. It's just I like initially when the Mike Matheson penalty happened, which classic, absolutely classic. He'd been fine all game, and then he had just that one moment.
You do gotta feel for him a little bit, though, because it's not like he had the puck and he shot it straight up. He batted it out of the air, which is always a little unfair to call it delay of game when you have
No, I
no
totally agree.
chance on
I
that one.
totally agree, but it
But
was so
it
funny.
is funny because he's a bit of a whipping boy because of the mistakes he's made, and it's like, sure enough, he's had a great game. He hasn't really made any mistakes, and then whoop,
Yeah,
I
the
got to get
first
one in
was
before the
rough,
buzzer.
but I feel like that's just like I think Carrier and Matheson just it's been a pairing. No, with White with I think I said something like I was like if this does not if they don't like if this doesn't result in a goal, this is hilarious. Like it's a hilarious bit. Then it did result in a goal, but the goal was on such bullshit that I was just mad about that. I think I totally forgot that Mike Matheson was even in the box. I was like, "Th- there was a penalty. Who cares what it was happening? We were on the PK. Like I did not even remember that it was Mike Matheson at that point because I was so heated. I'm so glad they won, but I am like I'm such a hater. Like I am such a hater that I was like before I logged on and had to like we started getting set up for the call and everything was happening. I my prim my primary emotion was still anger, which is insane of me because it was such a like it was such a fun game, but I was just mad. So this is the fun thing about like I think having a guest because if you weren't here, I don't know if I would have started on the positives because we are getting to the negatives. I don't want to talk a lot about the negatives, but I think people are frustrated. So we need to talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant on the penalty kill. Uh Honestly, on the penalty kill, he's a pretty good elephant, but on the rest of it, David Savard. David Savard. Uh Question mark?
It's tough. I mean, like the biggest problem right now is that they don't have six good NHL defensemen on the roster. Because like they got Jack Eye in the press box, but he's not playing that great either. Like
Mhm.
the mistake he made against Carolina where he came across the ice and turned a 3-on-2 into a 2-on-1. I think that was the nail in the coffin for him.
Yeah,
And it's
he
just
can't
like
be
you could
doing
bring
that.
Savard out and you put Jack Eye in. It's like, does that fix a problem or does it just change the problem? Because as you mentioned it, he's pretty good on the penalty kill, Savard. It's just you can't really only play him on the penalty kill. That's going to be the big question: is are any of the prospects ready to take a jump next year to where they
Mhm,
don't need David Savard, or are they going to have to go out and add another player in the
mhm.
short term? Because Savard, as we know, is a free agent, and I gotta think they're not going to bring him back. I think they've kind of know he's not that guy anymore.
I think
Um,
it's very clear he's done, and
yeah,
I think that he's the kind of player where if he's ready to, like, retire, I think the organization will be happy to keep him. I think that's and I'd be happy for the organization to keep him, frankly, because he seems like a very good culture driver. But right now I'm looking at the time on ice and, David Savard played the least amount of minutes at 10 minutes, 23 seconds. And then the second high, or like the guy above him, was Jaden Struble with 16 minutes and 11 seconds. So that's a whole like, uh, it's very, someone and several someones are probably getting double shifted there. Um, because, he's very good on the penalty kill, because it doesn't require a lot of movement. Uh, and you have other guys who, if the situation calls for it, they can move instead. It's fine. You have Josh Anderson on the penalty kill, not today, but generally he can move. It's fine. But 5 on 5, eh? That's a
it's rough.
that's
There's no other way to
rough.
put it.
And I agree with you. I think like personally, I would have probably taken out Savard for Jackai. But I also acknowledge that that's easy for me to say as someone who isn't in that room. uh with the thing we talked about with culture, that goes both ways. They I don't know if that room would take it very well if David Savard was benched or scratched. I in fact I would almost guarantee they wouldn't take it very well. They have eyes, but like also they very much respect David Savard. um and hockey players love players who'll block shots, so he's got that going for him. He's
Well,
Papa
and that's
Savard.
that's exactly it.
Yeah,
Like, his value on the penalty kill, I think, is just too hard to ignore, to where even though I think he's a liability at 5-on-5, to be honest,
yeah.
I think I just don't think Jack provides the same abilities on the penalty kill to justify taking Savard out. Although I do think you're right. I do think a very sound argument for who the guy who needs to come out could easily be David Savard.
Hmm. I also I feel like Jack I love him, and I think he played himself, frankly. I think he made it very easy. I think at that point, when Caden Gooley was gonna come back, Caden Gooley was always going to, play, like, uh, higher minutes. He was always gonna be given higher minutes, he was always gonna is pretty, it makes sense to me that they put Hutson and him together, although I think Carrier and him together were the best, uh, whatever. I think at that point, the choices were always gonna be scratch Savard, or not Savard. I don't think Savard was ever in the discussion, to be completely honest. To Marty, I don't think it was. I think the two options were either Struble or Jack Guy. And Struble was playing, I would say, some of the best defense was like consistently of his time with the Habs. Even since he's been taking off the Hudson pairing, even then, which I was really worried would just tank him straight up, like right back. But I think
Mhm.
he's been playing relatively well. Um, he is still getting shifts with Lane Hudson. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is I think Jack made that decision way too easy on Marty by making, his play had generally not been great with David Savard, which is, that's neither here nor there. You are playing with David Savard, better make the best of it, right? Like that's hard to do. I still remember Caden Gooley's first year. My boys playing like some of the highest minutes on the team, and it was with David Savard, and I would just constantly be posting save Caden Gooley from David Savard. So I get it. I get that that can tank some numbers, but I just think that, like, I made it too easy on Marty. I do hope that, like, I hope they find a way to, rotate him in maybe, because I do want him fresh for the playoffs. I don't love the idea of him, um, not being ready to go for those. But I think ultimately, considering the fact that I don't think taking David Savard out was ever going to be an option, just realistically, I think that taking, Arbor out over Struble was, ultimately the right decision, I would say.
Just think about where they would be if they didn't get Caden Gooley back, because when he got hurt, the expectation was he was done for the year,
Mhm,
and I just they've won 4 in a row, and I don't think it happens if they don't have Caden Gooley. Like, he's played very well for a guy who had the injury he had,
mhm,
and they didn't have an option without Gooley to take anybody out. They really
mhm,
didn't. They had 6 guys, and they had to roll with those 6 guys, so regardless of who they've taken out, Gooley coming back has made them a better team, which is very, very fortunate.
mhm. That feels very, like, obvious to say, but I remember when he went
Yeah,
out, I remember when he got hurt, I was like, "Okay, it's over." Um, and
yeah.
I think it's a a testament to how much the East just does not want and how deeply unserious that this division is, or this conference is. Uh, that and that plus the fact that, like, it's really cool that they were able to do that. They were able to, um, keep it, but I think you were already seeing some of the effects with, like, man, like, I say this every single time, but I've seen so many good stick plays from him, and I think I'm not sure any other defenseman on this team does it quite like the way he does in, terms of consistency, and, I would never, I think Lane Hutson is the best defenseman out of this group, but I think that there's some things that, like, other players do a little bit better. Makes sense, he's a rookie, like, I'm not expecting him to do everything the best, and I don't think he's ever going to be elite defensively. I do think he's gonna be very good defensively eventually, because he's gonna have to be. But anyways, I've really like I've seen there was this hilarious I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it was near the end when uh I think it was Struble or Carrier passed the puck behind their back. They were uh in the Hab zone right by Monty, and they passed it. I don't think Gooley was expecting it, kind of missed. The play came back, I think, and he was like sliding on his knees, and he like lifted the stick of the guy who is right by Monty's side, and the like the whistle was like blown half a second later. Um, and it was just so funny for as like as like David Savard could never move that fast. I don't think Jaden Struble would think to lift that stick. I don't see anybody else doing that quite as often as he does, which is really cool. I'm also really enjoying the burst of offense we're seeing. I think today was one of out of the last few games since he's come back, he's played. I'd say today was not like his best. Um, but there were still moments where I was like, okay, this is, it's really cool to have Kane Gooley back, and I'm really glad that that injury could have been a lot worse, and I'm really glad that he's ultimately seems like he's healthy-ish, healthy enough. Dare I say
Yeah.
healthy? Dare I stop at healthy?
He's NHL player healthy, of where we don't know how injured he is, but he's probably not even close to 100%.
Mhm, mhm.
I think of like Caulfield when he got that shoulder injury a few years ago. He even said himself, like, if we were playing meaningful games, I'd still be playing, but
Yeah,
there's no point.
yeah.
I think it's sort of the same thing here with Guliev, where it's like if they weren't in the playoff race, they wouldn't have brought him back. But
Mhm.
he's not missing out on this if he has the opportunity to play. This is
No,
the first
absolutely
chance
not.
for him in his career. Of course, he's going to want to be a part of it, and thank God he is, because they have a chance right now to make the playoffs, and he is a big reason why.
I agree, I agree. I think we're talking a little bit just going back to the chat, we're talking about David Savard again. Bernardo said oh, he says, I can't do it anymore." Then he says, "Oh God, you absolutely do not resign David Savard." I don't think they're going to. I don't think. He says he just has to retire. I'm just laughing because this is just I can see a man deteriorating, like just deteriorating at the idea of David Samar being re-signed. So I'm sorry, Bernardo. I don't think Ryan even. I'm not sure you really think that, Ryan. I don't think either of us think
No, I
that.
don't.
So I think we're fine. Something Nick does point out is the handedness probably plays a factor in why he's playing.
Yeah, I
Bernardo,
mean, Jakai's a left shot too. I don't think they want two left-handed guys playing on the right side.
no, no, they
So
don't.
that's definitely a factor too, I think.
No, I don't think they do either. Versus points out my favorite moment in the first period of the Flyers power play was the first period was the Flyers power play leaving Evans wide open for a breakaway and Savard just dumps it out of the zone. I listen. Grandpa's, doing his best. He is doing his best, and it's just I hope that they're able to do something this summer for the right side of the defense is all I'm gonna say, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their plan is, because ideally Reinbacher is close to ready, but the fact of the matter is he's sort of had injuries himself, so he's a little bit behind where you would probably want him to be. So
Mhm.
they might have to find a stopgap in the meantime.
Mhm. Um, you know
But I
what?
don't think that'll be David.
I don't think it'll be David tomorrow. I think we're gonna move over to our overtime period. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We're happy to answer them. Um, but kind of to start off my own overtime period, I'm gonna say, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this because it seems pretty obvious, but you're the Habs, you can't use you know going into the summer, your biggest need is
Oh, is that a question?
Yeah. I think you know
Oh,
the
okay, okay.
I think you know, but I was just it's gotta be a 2C, right? Like, that's what you're looking for this summer?
Y Yeah, I think so. I mean, the sad truth is, in a perfect world, it's Kirby Doc, but I don't know if he's taken the jump you'd want him to, and I also just unfortunately, I don't think you can rely on him to be healthy enough to be able to take on the rigorous amount of hockey that you're gonna need from him, especially if you wanna go on deep playoff runs.
Mhm.
Um,
Which
so
is
I do think
unfortunate
that that
because
is
there's a lot of potential
it's
there, and when he played
it
his
is.
best last season, although we were having that insane conversation about how should be the 1C over Nick Suzuki, which fuck you guys. Even then, whatever, but even then I would say he's very at his best, very good. Ultimately, I think the health is just not unfortunately reliable, and I don't think you saw him take the step that you needed this year.
No, I think and the good news is the thing you don't wanna be is in a situation of where you have a need to address and you don't have the means to make it happen.
Mhm.
You've got 2 first-round picks, you've got all these prospects other than Demidov and Reinbacher that I think you'd be comfortable moving
Mhm.
to where the whatever the price is, you could pay the price to get a 2 center via trade, or you even have the cap space in free agency if you find that there's a guy to do it. You referenced that Frank Saravalli interview earlier with Ken Hughes, and in that same interview, I think he said he wouldn't sign an 8-year deal for a 30-year-old player,
Mhm.
which I really appreciate him saying because those never age well.
We saw a lot of
But
those. Hey,
we did,
maybe
yeah.
Brendan Gallagher can change your mind? Question mark.
Well, he's certainly not a 2C, so they still need to find that answer. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, ideally, they find it maybe via trade, and they find a guy who's sort of fits into the window, like a younger guy. Um, but that's definitely the biggest need. I don't think there's a question. They do
Mhm.
also probably need a right shot defenseman to replace David Savard, but I would say 2C is definitely the
Mhm.
biggest need.
How do you feel about the concept? And l- don't. I again, our lovely friends over at Locked On Canadians pointed this or suggested it. Sorry, and I don't know like if it's really all that good of an idea because this guy is older. So you'd probably want him as a bit of a stopgap. But then, who are you stopgapping him for? Do you anticipate Hage being ready by then, et cetera, et cetera? Those are questions. But um, what do you think
I
about
think I know where this is going.
what do you think about Nazem Kadri on this team?
Oh, that's not where I thought you were
Where
going.
do you think I
Okay.
was going? All
I
right.
thought we were talking maybe Sidney Crosby, maybe at
Well,
some
that's
point.
listen, we
That's
would
that's
love
dream
that,
scenario.
but that's a pipe dream, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Kadri's interesting. Um, what's his contract? That's the question I think I would ask first, is how much money he's making.
I'll look into
'Cause
that
I
for
think
you.
the benefit right now is, you don't have to worry too much about the financials, especially if it's a shorter term deal,
Mhm.
which I think Kadri still has a few years left on
Uh,
because, you're not.
I'm not bad, question mark. I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. I think the captain. Okay. He's on year 7. Sorry, year 3 of a 7-year deal. And his cap hit is 7. So that's not that bad. I don't
Yeah,
think
the
so.
cap hit's not that bad, especially because you're not really paying 1 center money for Nick Suzuki.
Mhm.
The years would be the one
I think
thing
that's
that I
yeah.
would be
Yeah.
a
That's the
little
question.
weary of. Although if the cap keeps growing, that could be not too bad if like, let's say 3 years from now, you've got Michael Hayes as your 2 center because he's grown into that and he's still on his entry level deal.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, it's maybe a little bit more digestible if your 3 center is a Nazem Kadri who's in the twilight of his career, probably making a little bit more money than you'd like for a 3 center, but you're paying a 2 center entry level money that might not be a big deal.
Mhm. It's
It's not a
kind of
bad
like the
idea.
Josh Anderson, Galley kind of situation right now that, like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
in center, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. You don't hate it?
That's not a bad idea. I haven't heard that suggestion before.
I hadn't
In
either.
a
I'm
perfect
totally stealing this from Locked On Canadians, by the way, guys. Highly recommend the podcast. Part of my nightly ritual. So
in a perfect world, you might even be able to get retention on that, but I don't think that Calgary would be interested in doing that.
hmm
I'm
hmm
also curious what the asking price for Kadri would be,
yeah.
because, I mean, if you take on the full salary, then I'm sure the price won't be as high, because 'cause I'm sure Calgary would love to get the contract out from under them too.
hmm
Um,
Because I think they're in a weird spot too, where they probably should be rebuilding. Um, but I don't know if they ever will. So that's the question.
well, they don't have they're not gonna get their first round pick this year the way things are going, so
Yeah, yeah. Something so
are they
that's
winning right now?
I don't know. I
Let
think
me
they're pretty
check.
much out of the playoffs at this point though, with
Oh,
the
yes,
emergence
St.
of the
Louis
Blues.
is running away.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're losing again, so
versus who? Sorry, who are they playing?
they're Calgary's playing Vegas right now, so they're
Yeah,
down 2-0, so
coughing baby hydrogen bomb. Um, you, I think something that like there's a certain amount of risk you take to that because Nick kind of points out that Habs need a 2-3 year stopgap. So a guy comes in before Hage is ready, which I think like Kadri would be a good fit for. Um, I watched a lot of him for a few years on the Avs. I think he's gotten a lot better with his temperament in terms of decision making. Um, Contract is a little bit in terms of timeline. He is a little older than I'd like. And I think you're really hoping that age can be the real thing. And that's the risk you're taking. That's kind of the thought I had when everybody was saying that Jake Evans can be replaced by Owen Beck. And my thought was always, I don't feel comfortable with that. I know it's just a 4C. I think Jake Evans also can do 3C as we're seeing. I think he's a very high-end 4C, mid 3C, I would say. Um, Really elite penalty killer, et cetera, et cetera. My guy, my normal guy. And I just it's a risky game you're playing, and with 2C with the position that like important, it's a
yeah.
real risk you're taking. I again say this from a point of view of somebody who watches the team who like spent years trying to band-aid 2C. Um, the Abs has spent a whole lot of assets, and again, they're in a different window. They're a completely different point of view, but like for a while it was like supposed to be New Hook. Then it was, they traded for there was Kadri. Kadri was doing, he then got too expensive. Then I believe they were trying Ross Colton, who is not a 2C. Then they tried Middlestat, who they had to trade away. They got Brock Faber. Now Brock Faber? No, Brock Nelson. They got Brock Nelson. Nelson may just leave this summer. They sent away their best prospect, right? Like it is very much that is a problem that can snowball. Like that's an important enough position that it can snowball very easily. Um, I think 2C is just I'm so risk averse. I could never be a GM because I am so risk averse.
Well, that's the challenge too, right? Is it takes 2 to make a deal, so you've gotta find a team that's willing to give up a player like a 2C that's valuable. So you either are probably gonna have to find a guy like Nazem Kadri, who Calgary's probably interested in moving on from as they sort of change their mind about how they're maybe building their team, or you have to take a risk on a guy like Kirby Doc, who needs a change of scenery and hasn't blossomed yet, hoping that he could blossom.
Mhm.
You're probably going to have a hard time finding an established number 2 center in the league that a team is willing to move on from, unless it is at the trade deadline, which at that point you need to be in a position to make that trade worthwhile, which this season I know they're probably, or not probably, I don't want to say that just yet, but potentially going to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
They didn't feel comfortable
knock
making
on
any
wood.
kind of moves at the deadline.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. They got to take a step to make that kind of trade next year at the deadline to be in a comfortable position to do that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it kind of limits your options as it is. So, you kind of have to take a risk, but at the same time, you don't have, there are no assurances, right? It's a
Yeah.
tough job to do because you basically, I mean, even their one center the Canadians had talk about a risk. They traded an established player, their captain, for a
Mhm.
prospect that ultimately did develop into the 1C, but they've had so many failures in prospects over the years that
Mhm.
there's no guarantees. So I think you're right. I think it's a tough decision, and they have to really weigh all the options, and they might have to pick up a contract like Kadri's if they really want to solve that problem,
Mhm.
or they just sort of have to wait and hope that a player can develop, or both. I mean, preferably
Preferably
they
both.
find a short
Yeah.
preferably they find a short-term solution, and then Hage is that long-term answer, but you're never gonna know until he is, right? So
Mhm. Yeah, completely. I really want Hage to be the answer. Like you said, I think the untouchables in terms of prospect really are just Demidov and Reinbacher as of right now. Um, I don't know if Haig is quite a untouchable, but it would really suck to see him go because I do think that that's a player. Um, and I love his story. I'm a sucker for a narrative, and it's just really cool to uh I'm not making light of it at all because my, dead dad's club really, but it's really just it's a lot. It's a good story, I think. Again, just for reference, my dad is also dead. So I'm like, I'm not making fun of him. I'm just saying. So it's a nice story. Um, we got I think which Ghislaine, comes in and says that Philly's out. Yeah, we love that. They also say that Owen Beck is probably not ready or not there yet. I think that's a guy who needs a little bit of work, a little bit of time. It was actually really funny. I'm not sure if you saw it. I posted about it. Or Jake Evans, once he signed the contract, like pointed out or said to Art and Bess, I think that he was like, he, he was like he was he was like, "I kind of knew that, like, uh, Beck would be my replacement or, like, would probably, and I didn't really feel like helping him, so I didn't give him much advice when he was up," which is just so funny, and it's something some players have thought before, but they've never really, like, they never really thought.
oh,
They never say
that's
it.
why that's why that's why players won't tank, because in many cases the guy that you're drafting is your replacement, right? Like
Yeah,
you're not picking you're not cheering for help if you know that the help is replacing you. Like Nick Suzuki might want help, but I don't know if Josh Anderson and Christian Dvorak give a lot of crap about who the Habs are drafting if the guy's coming to take their job. So
yeah.
I can understand the hostility from Evans a little bit.
It's just really funny to me that he said it out loud, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
I believe it, and I believe other guys have thought it, but it's just funny that he was like, "Yeah, I'll help him out now." This is so funny. Okay, we're gonna log off very soon because I have already kept Ryan for a long time. And this is the risk that happens when somebody tells me that I can keep them. But before we kind of uh we'll take like one or two more questions if you have any, but um just kind of want to another option that was dropped in the chat by Nick was I wonder if they can try to pry Bo Horvat out of New York. He is younger than Kadri. Um, and it seems like the Islanders don't really know what they're doing with themselves. I don't know what Lou is doing. I'm not sure Lou knows what Lou is doing. So, what are your thoughts on Horvat?
I love Bo Horvat, the player. I do, and he's a leader, right? Like he's a captain in Vancouver, and probably could be a captain in New York.
Hmm.
They still got Anders Lee as captain there, I think, though, right? I
I
believe
believe
so.
so.
The thing I don't like about Bo Horvat, though, is the contract. He's on year 2 of an $8.5 million contract. So,
And how
I
many
mean, you're
years
talking
is that?
about 8. Sorry, he's 8-year contract. He's in year 2, so he's got a
Oh,
lot of years left,
oh,
and he'd be your highest paid player. So that's
yeah.
a little high for me. But like from a fit standpoint and from a player standpoint, Bo Horvat would probably be a great addition because he's offensively gifted. He's got 52 points this year. He can score. Canadians fans remember that from the game we played against them a couple weeks ago. And he can play in all situations. I think he kills penalties as well. So he can do a little bit of everything. he could probably take on a bit of a checking role, but I don't love the contract. I think it's a bit rich for what the Canadians are looking for. And I also don't know what you'd have to give up to get him because I don't know what the Islanders' plan is because I don't know if Lou Lamoriello knows what the Islanders' plan is. So
Man, I think it's time for to maybe hang him up, Lou. Uh, but I feel like that man is gonna work forever. Like it doesn't feel like he's ready to like give up. Um, but I do like for me personally, I think that this is going to be a trade rather than a free agent. Because there really isn't much. Adam says I think Hughes is gonna shell shock us in a good way this summer. Don't know how though. Bernardo brings up one that is a little bit controversial. Ederson?
that's interesting because Vancouver is another team that it's like I don't really know what the thought process is there. Like your best player is Quinn Hughes. What message does it send if you trade away JT Miller in the season and then you also decide to then trade away Elias Pettersson? If I was him, I wouldn't want to stick around for that. And I don't think if you're Vancouver, you want to piss off your best player and captain by basically gutting the team. So I don't know what if Vancouver is actually interested in trading Pettersson. And the other thing is he's had a very down year,
Mhm.
and JT
His
Miller
contract.
has gone to New York, and he's played really well. And so I think some people are starting to wonder who the problem was there. I'm not saying it was Pettersson. All I'm saying is you talk about culture and the culture the Canadians have built. I don't know if Pettersson is the right fit
Mhm.
in Montreal.
Mhm.
Again, a talent perspective, man, it'd be fun to have a guy like Pettersson on the Canadians. I just don't know if he fits in to what the Canadians are building.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a possibility to be honest. I I mean to be honest, Bernardo did phrase it as I think Hughes is going after Pedersen, which hey, he wouldn't be like you got to kick every tire you can. And I think
Well,
Pedersen
we know that Kent Hughes is not afraid to be aggressive, right?
yeah.
He's
Yeah.
innovative and aggressive, so he could do something crazy. Maybe it's not Pedersen, but maybe it's something of that sort of idea of like,
Mhm.
whoa, I didn't think that was an option, and here it
Mhm.
is. So
Yeah, he's very that is one thing that's really exciting, I think. It's scary, but it's also very exciting. Um, yeah, I think Pedersen is the uh personally, I do think JT Miller was probably the problem because I don't like JT Miller and I refuse to think the best of him.
no,
Uh,
I would think that that's true too, but at
yeah,
the
but I
same
think the
time, it's
narratives are
like,
what they are. And
yeah,
Adam says some of the Hawks fan base is talking about trading Bedard. Hey, man, if you want to give him up, if you if he's out there, we got him. I'll take it.
yeah.
I'll take that hand.
I'll
I'll
give
take that
you
off your hands. You know, like we'll
I'll
be
give you
so
a freshly used David Savard. You know, we'll even re-sign him, so you don't have to do that. We'll get the paperwork out of the way. You could just take him.
hell. You know what? You know what? I will even give you love him. I'll even give you a Josh Anderson if you want him. I'll give
I
him
will
to you.
drive him to the airport myself.
Yep. I will, you know, give him a soft little kiss on his handsome head, and say, "Fly, free bird." And that's gonna that's gonna be that. The only question I'm seeing is Bernardo asking me, "Where's my cat?" I kicked her out today because she was being really annoying. Um, and also because last time she almost bit me when I tried to pick her up for you guys, which is not fair to her. So, and I also would not be able to stop myself from picking her up. So yeah, I am. This has been Game Over with K Mom. And we have Ryan Praught. Pratt? Sorry,
Prop,
Blue
prop.
Praught. My bad. Uh,
No
I
worries.
yeah, it's been it's been a little while since we've been on here. And thank you so much, everybody, for keeping us company. I know it's run a bit long. But again, Yapper, it was a really good game. Also, for the record, um, I have been saying this entire time that it was a 3-2 win. It was a 4-2 win. And technically a 4-1 win. So, yeah. Is NHL.com wrong? NHL is saying 4-2, but I don't remember the fourth one. But I'll take their word
I
for
don't
it.
think. I think it was 3-2.
I'm gonna take a look
I
at the
don't
score
remember the
sheet.
fourth one either.
I don't remember the fourth one either. Apparently Gallagher got an empty net. Sure, why not? Why not? And a wrister too while we're at it. Listen,
21 goals for Gallagher.
it was a win. Really cool. I
win's
forgot
a
to
win.
shout that out, but that is so cool. Brendan Gallagher, 20 goals in 2025. What a story. Okay, I'm gonna log off. Yeah, everybody's saying 3-2. Yeah, the NHL is definitely wrong. NHL.com. I mean, typical. But yeah, thank you everybody for stopping by. I will have all of Ryan's information in the description box. Is there anything you would like to leave us with, Ryan?
Just say thanks for having me. It was a blast talking some hockey.
Of course, talking a lot of hockey. Thank you, everybody. I love you guys. I will see you. Yeah, I'm gonna be on tomorrow, so I will see you tomorrow. You're not getting rid of me yet, just like the playoff picture is not getting rid of the Habs just yet. So, bye bye and good night.